you need to start from a point of understanding. Asking developers, hey, what are the problems that you have? Is a very powerful tool. What is getting in the way?
Technology is transforming how we think, how we lead, and how we win. From Intervision, this is Status Go, the show helping IT leaders move beyond the status quo, master their craft, and propel their IT vision.
If you are a tech product company, you know your dev team, your engineering team is your lifeblood. If you are a tech services company, you know how important development is to your clients. If you are a tech enabled company, a company whose primary product or service is not technology, you are probably becoming more and more aware every day of how important technology is to your company's success. No matter where you fall on that spectrum, odds are that you have a team of software engineers writing some level of custom code for your organization. When was the last time you invested in their experience? When was the last time you focused on making their jobs faster, easier, and more efficient? Welcome to Status Go. This is your host, Jeff Tunn. On this episode, we're going to sit down with Ramiro Berrelleza, founder and CEO of Okteto, a development experience automation platform. Ramiro is passionate about helping CTOs and CIOs drive innovation. Welcome to Status Go, Ramiro.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have been excited about this conversation. My background a million years ago is I was a developer. And man, I wish someone would have invested in our experience back in the day. But we won't get into that. What I'd love to start with, if you don't mind, could you share a little bit about your background, your career journey with our listeners?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, just like you, I've been, an engineer for most of my career. Now I'm a founder, CEO of Okteto. But, before that, for 15, 20 years, I was building software. Everything from cloud services at big tech, chat, startups, developer tools, a little bit of everything, which, has been very interesting because, as you said on the intro, all of these companies who are building software, whether it's service providers, consulting companies, software companies, like software is their lifeblood. So I've been immersed in that world for a very long time. As you can imagine, I have a lot of opinions on the topic, but I'm really excited to talk more about that and how, why I believe that developer experience automation is something that CTOs must take into consideration
Yeah.
as they build modern software organizations.
Where did this passion for engineering for software come from in your background?
It's been I've been passionate about this like pretty much my entire life. Early on, video games were kind of like the gateway to technology
Mhm.
for me. I grew up in Mexico, then moved to the US right after school. So in the early days was video games, the old style PCs that really got me into like first kind of just being marveled at what technology could do, this kind of new form. But
Mhm.
then as I grew up and I started to learn how they work, I was fascinated by the potential that this new back then new technology, the internet, then the cloud had for really transforming everything. And I've been lucky enough to seeing that transition from world where software was not mainstream, kind of like analog world, so to speak, to
Mhm.
now the
Yeah.
world we live in today, where every organization lives on software. So it's been fascinating, and it only fits into this passion of like, hey, software is transforming the world. More and more people are involved with software. So now let's make it easier for everybody. Let's make sure
Yeah.
everybody is as
Yeah.
effective. We talk about this on the prep call about how important it is for all of these companies to be good at building software. So it's been a kind of a self-fulfilling passion for a very long time. I was lucky enough
Uh-huh.
to, work in tech, very well-known companies like Microsoft, Atlassian, now a startup in Silicon Valley. So it's been a fun journey. It's been full of like satisfaction and just seeing the impact that software has on people. That's all it takes to kind of get you hooked in, and
Yeah.
that's why I keep
Yeah.
coming back for more.
Yeah, I love talking with you about this, Ramiro, because the passion comes through. Your face lights up when you talk about this. Now, I've never been, I guess, a founder of an enterprise. I have my own company, but I don't know that counts. I'm not really building something. I'm helping serve others. But what I've always heard is for that entrepreneurial spirit, that drive, is there's got to be a problem that you see, that maybe you see a solution for in a different way from somebody else. But what is this problem that you're attacking with Okteto, and why does that problem jump out to you and drive you passionately?
That's a great question, and you're right. Like I don't know if I could be doing what I'm doing, every day with the challenges that come from like funding a company, if it wasn't because I really believe on this problem. And the problem that we're solving at Octeto at a very high level is we want to automate everything developers do so they can get to work, so they can work on their thing. This is a very personal problem because this is something I've experienced through my entire career. It's always, you join a new team and you're excited. You want to, do some cool stuff. You're working
Mhm.
on whatever hottest tech it is at the moment. But then you kind of face this moment where, in order to get to work, there's all these things you have to do, right? There might be
Mhm.
this, it might be an open source project and you have this README with like 100 steps. Or maybe
Yeah.
you join a company and you have to go and collect all these accounts and passwords and setup instructions. And this is whether you're new to the project or maybe you're starting a new feature or you change teams. I've seen this everywhere. And it always kind of like annoyed me because there was like so much time that I was spending kind of doing these setups, right? Especially as
Yeah.
we move to like cloud native applications, this new world of containers, serverless,
Hmm.
Kubernetes, where applications have a lot of like, they're now distributed, so they have a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
I was spending more and more time just kind of like setting things up, trying to figure out which database I'm running. And then really for me, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back was at my previous team. We were like having all these issues around quality because when we were running the system in our laptops, it was like, hey, it works on my computer, works on my
Yeah.
machine, but then it didn't work on production. And there's this joke around works on my machine, but this really has serious, like products fail
Yeah. Yeah.
because of this. Customers suffer because of this. So when I was thinking, hey, what I want to do next, after spending 5 years in Atlassian, I was like very clear, hey, this problem is something that I've been trying to solve for a while, internally, team by team. Then, when I was talking to my now co-founders, really good friends, Pablo and Ramon, we all can agree, yes, this is a huge problem. We've all had this problem at our companies. And we were like, hey, let's take a stab at it. And because it's such a personal challenge,
Hmm.
it seemed easy to us. We're like, yeah, of course, we need to solve this because it's something that needs to be solved because everybody has it. Maybe naively at first we thought, yeah, we'll do it, but that's been kind of like the motivation for
Hmm.
a company. And as we come up with this idea of developer experience automation, it is firmly rooted in the challenges I've seen in the last 15 years on pretty much every team I've worked at. Some solve it, others just kind of like let every developer do it, but overall,
Hmm.
it's a challenge that keeps coming and coming. And now as the CEO of Okteto, when I go out and talk to our customers, community, prospects, we keep hearing from everybody that how this is such a huge problem, how engineering leadership grows concerned about like, are my developers just spending way too much time on this? Are they being
Right.
effective? Do they have the right tools to be successful? And that's where I'm hoping Okteto would help them answer these questions.
Well, and we talk about productivity on the engineering team, and how do you measure productivity, and how do you know that you're getting the most out of that team. You mentioned some of the trends that we're seeing in development, or containerization and serverless and those kinds of things. What are some of those trends that are impacting the software development lifecycle that you see from your seat?
Yeah, there's a few different things that I'm seeing. First is you have this continuous trend of making production automatic, replicable,
Hmm.
manageable. Right? We have, like as you said, containers. Kubernetes, a big player in that space.
Yeah.
Now we have the GitOps movement. Um, there's a few other things there. Um, Observability, feature flags, which allows you to test changes in production. There's this trend of like, hey, how do we manage the complexities of production? That is one.
Yeah.
The other that is closer to my world today is around how do we measure the effectiveness of my
Mm.
engineering organization.
Yeah.
In the last few years, been a lot of like progress, especially in academia, with the Dora metrics. The ORA is
Hmm.
one, Space is the other, which they both started as kind of papers, a lot of research,
Right.
but
Right.
now more and more companies are implementing it, and also now there are more vendors who make it easy for you. And for those who haven't heard of this before, like Dora is this methodology where there's certain metrics that you start tracking, like how many deployments are you doing per day, how long it takes you to fix an issue, how fast
Hmm.
are you merging code, and they're being used as proxies for evaluating the effectiveness
Hmm.
of your organization. And then the third trend, which is the one that is close to me, is around developer experience. You have
Yeah.
production, it's automated, it's working. Then you're measuring the productivity of your organization through Dora. And then you figure out, hey, I have some issues. Well, that's where developer experience automation comes in, which is
Hmm.
how can you create processes, whether they're automated or just manual, to help your team go faster. And this is where
Yeah.
I was actually recording a podcast yesterday with a open source and coffee podcast, and the host Isaac expressed this as teams need somebody to help them kind of like remove the chances of them slowing down. And
Uh,
that's what I think about developer experience, right? Is the
yeah.
emergence of platform teams, is the emergence of decentralized team that cares about standardization, about
Hmm.
governance, about defining sandboxes. Because that way, and I love the way Isaac put it, yeah, engineers then don't have to waste time trying to figure out which database do I use?
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
I get a copy of this service? It's like it doesn't matter. It's all decided by the organization so that every engineering team can just go as fast as they can. And that
Yeah.
for me is the essence of developer experience. So, organizations and your leadership, they need to think of all these three things. Production has always been a concern. Um, Developer productivity has always been a concern, but I've never seen it being as data driven as it is now, which for me is a
Hmm.
great
Yeah.
progress. And now this world of developer experience is what's kind of like, I would call it up and coming, but it's something that's now more formalized than before. Because we always had experience. Right? The challenge was before it was left to like every developer,
Right.
or every team to figure it out. And now we're seeing this more like concentrated efforts with budget, with goals, with mandates, from leadership to really invest and to be more intentional about the experience that you're building. Because, and going back to the way you opened the show, all these companies realize that, hey, regardless of what you do, you might be an insurance
Yeah.
company, you might be a bank, you might be a healthcare provider, you're building software.
Right.
And if you're not good at building software, you're making your job a lot harder. And
Yeah.
that's something that, with Okteto, we talk to a lot of companies that I'm always surprised of, like the companies that we start talking to, because they're like, oh, right, of course, like they are developers. It might be
Mhm.
one point we gave a demo to like this national, not in the US, but like a state bank.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, interesting. They're like, yeah, we build all this software internally to manage all our process. And I was like, oh, interesting, of course. Yeah, you have hundreds of developers, thousands of developers maybe,
Yeah.
because even though you're a bank, a central bank, you're still a software company as well, and
Yeah.
and that is fascinating.
So yeah, they're spending time and resources to build tools to help them build software
Yeah,
when they should be building the software for the bank. Yeah, that's we talk a lot about customer experience, user experience. Is the developer experience all about speed, or are there other nuances that enter into it in your mind that help the developer be more effective?
It's definitely about the speed, but I think that, and here's where like as we mature as a practice, we understand more of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a speed in the right direction, right? Like going fast but going backwards is not going to help your business. I
Yeah,
think what's
yeah,
very important, and when I talk about this with peers or in forums like this, is I always like to stress this: is it's about making sure that your team is working on the right things. It's making sure that the time, the mental energy is spent in the right things. Like cognitive load is something that now I think engineering organizations are starting to understand more, and the dangers of like if you're thinking about a lot of things,
mm-hmm.
you're less effective of each of them because there's only so much mental capacity, focus, attention that you have.
Yeah,
So a big factor of building a developer experience is making sure that through that you're enabling your organization to focus on what matters to the business, so that
yeah,
all the energy, all the creativity, all the flow goes into those tasks, because that
yeah,
is what makes your business different. Like that is what innovation is going to make a difference, and that for me is very important. Like velocity is important, rate of error, but definitely focus, morale. Like that's something else that as you build a better developer experience, having like happier developers who feel more satisfied with their setup, who feel like, hey,
yeah.
the company is not getting in the way of me delivering value.
Uh-huh.
And that's something that companies don't do it on purpose. But in several places I've worked in the past, you see where if you don't have a good dev experience, the developers are like, you know what, I don't want to push this change because it's such a hassle. I'll just kind of like leave it the way it is. It kind of
Yeah,
works. It's good enough. Compared
yeah,
to like high performing organizations where they're always pushing the envelope, but because they do have this experience that allows them to do that in a way that is safe, that is fast,
yeah,
that is without much friction. So those are aspects that I feel like leaders need to worry about. And
yeah.
morale it's a finicky thing. Like how do you know if people are effective or happy? But
Right.
are things that you know leaders need to consider. And there's now a lot of techniques asking, like surveys are actually right now
Mm.
very popular and are surprisingly effective, just asking developers, hey, what gets in the way of work?
Yeah. What's
What
slowing you down?
well,
I,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
I love the concept of cognitive load because that points to uh, quality, right? If you've got all this stuff going on and uh, you're not maybe paying attention to everything that you need to, errors creep in this day and age of cybersecurity threats. You want to make sure that your software is secure, so you want focus on that as well. Now, when I think of developers, and I can say this because I used to be one, we can be kind of a finicky bunch. We kind of like to do things the way we like to do things. How are you and your team working with your clients to, I'm going to say, impose standards on your development team by coming in and saying, this is going to be the experience, this is going to be the tool set? How are you dealing with the potential of pushback?
That's a really good one. It's actually something that we've been talking a lot internally, because the other day in Slack, right, we're talking about the word governance, and is this something that developers, how do they react to it? And
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
agree with you. We're all finicky bunch, and words like governance for some can bring back memories of like this really bad kind of like lockdown
yep.
laptops, and you don't have like root access to your device. You can't install like the IDE that you need or the patch that you need. So it's
Mhm.
it's it's funny because it does carry certain kind of like checkered past. But
Yeah,
however,
yeah,
I think that it's true. Developers don't like to kind of like this, but developers like to be effective, and they like when things are not getting on their way.
yeah,
So
yeah,
one of the topics that we discuss a lot with our clients is standardization, governance, and replicability are good things for the business, and that's something that
mhm,
CTOs I've always understood. It's nothing new.
Yeah.
Where it changes, I think, is the approach that you take. Because I feel like as leadership shows to the developers that this governance is not about kind of like senseless limitations.
Hmm.
It's about helping. I always helping with the choices, helping with like, hey, I'm gonna flatten the road ahead so you
Uh-huh.
can go faster. So that's where I think modern tooling overall and this kind of new tendencies around calling it developer experience, worrying
Hmm.
about like I call this kind of like the developer ergonomics of like, is it easy to use? Is it
Yeah.
clear? Yeah. I think that helps developers can accept that, hey, this is for my own benefit. This is not the old school, you're forced to do. This is more like, hey, here. The other
Yeah.
thing that I'm seeing a lot of companies are doing, which is great, is now we're talking this kind of like centralized platform teams, IT, DevOps, dev experience. It's called in different ways in different places, but they're starting to offer this as a service. It's like developer experience as a service in the sense of like, hey, we're building this opt
Yeah.
in. You can go your own way and you have to like, build your own roads and, cut
Yeah.
down your own trees, or you can join us here. We're going to do all these things for you so you don't have to worry about it. And I think that's something that I think more developers choose that way
Yeah.
because like, I've seen this change so much over the past 10-15 years where like, nobody is really running CI/CD servers under their desk anymore because now like leadership understands, hey, we need this, we're going to invest on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
The emergence of best of class tools, like for me, the fact that now organizations have budgets for tooling for developers shows a very important shift. Like before, I worked for very large companies where like it was unthinkable for a developer to be like, hey, can I get $1,000 a year for like, I don't know, my IDE and this tooling for running tests or for a new device? Like in a lot of these companies was like, no, why you need, no, you're a
Yeah.
developer,
Yeah.
you have a computer, standard issue, that's it. So that has
Yeah.
changed
Just
so
sit and
much.
write code. Just sit and write code.
Exactly. And you figure it out. And I think that
Yeah.
creates this culture of like defensiveness where like you're like, well, I'll figure it out, and issue doesn't know what they're doing. And we have to run our things rogue and with my credit card, and then I have to like find a way to expense it. I think that's changing a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely like leadership needs to approach this from a you buy-in,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of be empathetic of like why are the needs of your team, kind of like explain why they're being invested, because like it's about, I really like the phrase like kind of removing the option for you to go slow. It's like, hey, I don't want you to spend like this discussions of like, are we using AWS or Google Cloud? It's like, okay, the leadership decided, we made analysis, and now we're going to
Yeah.
give you the tools, so it doesn't matter to you.
Yeah.
That to me is when I see that, and I've seen it in some of our clients. It's really cool how CTOs will like decide, hey, we're going to implement this strategy around the experience, and then you see developers groaning, oh, why do we have to do this?
Yeah.
And then 3 months later, you meet them, they're like so excited, oh my god, this is so great, my life's so
Yeah.
much easier now, I'm no longer fighting with XYZ. And once they realize that, they're like, oh yeah, I guess there's value in platforms, in standards, in sandboxes, in governance. And that is
Yeah.
on top of what the leadership or like the organization needs around like compliance, security, as you were saying earlier. So I think there's a huge opportunity here for like a win-win situation where everybody gets what they need and together they help move the objectives of organizations forward.
I think as you were talking, I could almost hear our listeners who are developers cheering. Right? It's about time. It's about time. But the CTOs, the CIOs that are out there, where should they start when you go into a company that they're probably doing agile development, but they don't have a lot of structure in place. They probably got Jira that they're using and things like that. Where do you start to invest in the developer experience?
My perspective here is that you need to start from a point of understanding. I think that's where asking developers, hey, what is getting in the way? What are the problems that you have? Is a very powerful tool. Like it might sound like kind of like, I don't know, like cheeky sometimes, but it's like really like coming from like the, hey, tell me the 10 things that get in the way.
Yeah.
Which problems? Because it's fascinating how, and there's a lot of research on this. When you compare organizations who do this very heavy, data-driven analysis, like collecting all these things automatically, and then you compare them to organizations that gonna perform the surveys, and the results are the same. Like,
Yeah.
so what I recommend, like CTOs, because sometimes CTO joins a company and they have a mission, right? They come with a mandate. They were recruited by the CEO to modernize organization or solve some like untractable problem. And sometimes they join, they're like, okay, I'm gonna redo everything, and this is what we did last time, so it's gonna work. Sometimes that works, but most of the time that kind of creates a lot of like opposition from the engineering there. So I think definitely coming from a point of empathy, of understanding, hey, what are the problems that are blocking you? Because that's where the world of developer experience automation can help a lot, because there's all these low-hanging fruits of things that nobody enjoys doing. Like nobody enjoys having to manually deploy a service and a database and all this orchestration, or very few people do. If you can automate that, and then you remove like 10 minutes from my workflow,
Right.
even if those 10 minutes is enough for me to kind of go have coffee or chat with someone, those are 10 minutes that I'm doing something much better than before. So definitely like understanding where are your developers being blocked, where are they seeing the friction, because it might be non-obvious. Like we always try to optimize build times, deploy times, but maybe that's not where they're being stuck. Maybe like we talk to companies where like their blockers where it's very hard to do code reviews because the code is so complex, or it's really hard to like get started because I have to like launch all this infrastructure and it takes like 2 hours, 3 hours, or in some cases, hey, merging to production is hard because, or merging to main is hard because the tests always fail at the end with like flaky changes. So I think it's very important to ask, and then definitely, like, I'm a big fan of automation and bias. That's what our company does, but for a reason. And it's because I do believe that anything you can do that means developers don't have to think about it, they don't have to understand how the whole thing works end to end, that they can have these nice abstractions, is worth doing. But assuming that is the problem, like, you definitely need to find those 80-20 where, like, hey, solving 2 or 3 things is going to make it better for everybody, because then you also gain buy-in. And then when you want to make the more risky, controversial changes, your organization believes in you, and they're like, oh yeah, they came, they fixed some things, okay, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then that's where you can start to like push the envelope and innovate on things that your team might not be super comfortable with.
I love this concept of going to your team and asking them, what are the blockers? Because you mentioned no one likes to have to take the time out to do some of the repetitive tasks. The other thing that developers don't like to release problem code into production, and if you can help them with their quality, because your environment more closely mimics the production environment. I think that feeds back to the morale of the developer, right? That they're not getting called out on some of those things. Well, Ramiro, we are just about out of time. And as I warned you, here on Status Go, we love to leave our listeners with a specific call to action. So our listeners are technology leaders. They may be in a tech-enabled company, they may be in a tech product company, a tech service company, but they want to drive change. So what are 1 or 2 things that our listeners should go do tomorrow because they listened to our conversation today?
2 things. So the first one is, and I know I've said this several times, but I want to repeat it, is ask your developers. Like, create a small survey. There's a lot of resources on the web, and if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'll share my information with Jeff. But 5 questions to say, hey, or even 1 question: what is getting in the way? And let them be very explicit. You're going to be surprised. You can ask them, hey, is it easy to release code? Is it easy to build a new feature? Like some kind of questions where you leave some leeway so that they can express. Do that. And then number 2 is look at those results and of them, pick the one that's like the biggest driver of change you can imagine, or kind of find something balanced where, hey, big change, kind of low effort, and automate it. Like figure out how. There's a lot of tools in the market. There's a lot of companies in the market kind of helping with this, but find a way to automate, whether it is release to production, whether it is running tests after a pull request, spinning up a dev environment, any of these things, pick one and automate it, because like saving time and kind of like removing all this like non-differentiating tasks from your day to day is going to pay off. It's going to pay off immensely year over year. So surveys, ask them, hey, developers, what pains you? And number two is, hey, find one thing to automate so you can get it off your developers. They don't have to think about it anymore, and they'll gain back that focus and mental space to do things that really matter for your business.
Get that quick win. Get that under your belt.
Yes, those quick wins are. It's something that I think that, and I best a lot of things. Like also like is this quick wins is something that people I think underestimate a lot. But these small things are like, paper cuts are. There is such a thing as a death by 1,000 paper cuts.
So yes.
If you fix them, people just run faster. And happier developers are more productive developers. They're more trusting. They take more risks and they innovate, because they're not going to innovate. As you said, nobody likes to release faulty code. It's the worst feeling in the world where you break production or where you introduce a bug. And if it happens too much because of lack of tooling or too much friction, then developers will just stop pushing and be like only going for the safe changes.
That's right.
And that's how your competition wins. So keep that in mind, as for all those who are listening, especially CTOs, VP of Eng, these are very important things. And these are things that should not be underestimated. There's enough horror stories in the world of organizations that, because of paper cuts and bad morale, lose to their competition. I've been on teams like that. I've been on high-performing teams, and the difference is amazing. And it takes a lot of effort, but it's easy to start. It's just start small wins, gain momentum, gain trust, and you'll deliver amazing results.
Ramiro, thank you so much for spending time with us today. As I said at the beginning, as a former developer, I love the passion. I've always been passionate about the developer experience. Didn't know what to call it back in the day, but now I've got words to call it. So I really appreciate you being on our show.
Thanks for your time, Jeff. I enjoyed the conversation a lot. I hope your audience gets something out of it. But thank you for having me, and looking forward, with chatting with everybody. You can find me online. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, Ramiro@Okteto.com. And if you need help with your developer experience, just shoot us an email at podcast@Okteto.com, and we're happy to chat about all your dev experience questions, needs, challenges, automation or not.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. We will be sure to include those email addresses and those links in our show notes. So if you do have a question that you'd like to ask, visit intervision.com/status-go. The show notes will have those links and contact information. This is Jeff Tunn for Ramiro Berrelleza. Thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Status Go podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes or get more information at intervision.com. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, find Intervision on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thank you for listening. Until next time.